Hello, everyone. I'm Ethan Cole. The story I'm about to tell isn't looking for pity, nor is it about boasting of some victory. It's simply the journey of a man who once thought hard work and kindness could bridge any divide, only to realize that some bridges can only be built with genuine respect, something money or one-sided effort can never buy. This is the story of a forgotten folding chair and the table I eventually built for myself. I've always been proud of my hands. They aren't soft, not perfect. There are calluses here, a faint scar there from careless moments with machinery. But these hands built Cole Construction, my small company, from scratch in an old pickup truck. No inheritance, no leg up. Just long nights hunched over blueprints, sweat-soaked days on job sites, and a steadfast belief that if you work hard enough and honestly enough, you create real value. That value, for me, lies in sturdy homes, meticulously repaired spaces, the satisfaction in a client's eyes when they get the keys. That's my world. That world collided, or rather, existed in a strange parallel with the world of Sophia, my wife. Sophia Sterling. The name says it all. The Sterlings embodied old money success. Lawyers, architects, glittering charity galas, perfectly tailored suits, and well-practiced smiles. They lived in a world where appearances were everything, where value was measured by the university you attended, the clubs you joined, the connections you had. And I, Ethan Cole, with my construction business and calloused hands, was clearly an out-of-place note in their perfect symphony. I knew that from the beginning, but I loved Sophia. I loved her rare, genuine smile when it was just the two of us, the way she'd rest her head on my shoulder after a long, stressful day at her father's law firm. I thought that love was strong enough to blur the differences, enough for them to accept me. I was wrong. For 10 years as a Sterling in-law, I was like a convenient accessory that no one really paid attention to. At family events, I was always the one asked to take the group photos. Ethan, you've got the longest arms. Grab a shot of the family for us, would you? I heard that line so often I knew it by heart. Like I was the tripod that came with the marriage certificate. Once, I tried to slide into the photo myself. My mother-in-law, Lorraine, gave me a tight, social smile, but her eyes were ice cold. Perhaps just the family for this one, dear? The implication was crystal clear. I wasn't family. Sophia would just laugh it off, gently running her fingers through my hair. They're just old school, honey. They don't mean anything by it. But they did mean it. The meaning was in the way my father-in-law, Harold Sterling, introduced me at formal dinners. This is Ethan. He's quite handy. Not my son-in-law, not Sophia's husband. Just a vague compliment that let everyone know I worked with my hands. The meaning was in the times I'd show up for someone's birthday party and be asked to look at a faulty porch light before anyone even said a proper hello. The meaning was in Sophia's silence every single time it happened. She never corrected them, never defended me. They were paper cuts. Small, sharp, and countless. They slice into your skin, bit by bit, slowly, silently. You might not even realize you're bleeding until the wound is deep. I tried to ignore them, told myself I was being too sensitive, that I should be grateful to be accepted into such a family. I tried to compensate with hard work, with usefulness. I fixed things around their house without being asked, gave free consultations on small construction projects for their friends, always showed up, always willing to help. I hoped, naively, that this dedication would make them see me differently. That one day, they wouldn't just see the handyman, but Ethan, a real part of the family. That hope, sadly, faded with every paper cut. Then Olivia, Sophia's younger sister, announced her engagement. The wedding was set for the following spring at one of the most luxurious vineyard resorts in the region. The invitation arrived, nestled in a thick, cream-colored envelope, the gold lettering elegantly embossed. Our names were printed side by side. Mr. and Mrs. Ethan Cole. But something about the spacing felt separate. And deep down, I knew they weren't really inviting me. They were inviting Sophia and her plus one, the husband she happened to have. As the wedding day approached, a growing sense of unease settled over me, like a dark cloud slowly gathering on the horizon. It was a stark contrast to Sophia's excitement. She spent hours flipping through bridal magazines, discussing color schemes, hairstyles, the guest list filled with prestigious names. "You'll wear your gray suit, right, Ethan?" she asked, admiring herself in a stunning floor-length navy gown. It brings out the color of your eyes. I nodded, forcing a smile. Not because I cared about the suit, but because I cared about her, about that fleeting glimpse of joy on her face. I tried to push away the foreboding feeling. I told myself this was a chance to show goodwill, to prove I genuinely wanted to belong. Olivia was the only Sterling who occasionally showed me genuine warmth. I decided to prepare a truly meaningful wedding gift, not just some expensive item they could easily buy themselves. I knew the resort, knew their outdoor lighting system was rather basic. With my expertise, I could help make the space truly magical, especially for those golden hour photos couples always dream of. I discreetly contacted the resort's event manager, offering to help design and provide some additional specialty lighting for the vineyard pathways and the floral arch where the ceremony would take place. I went there myself to survey the grounds, drew up the layout plans, even negotiated a better price from one of my trusted suppliers. The cost wasn't insignificant, $5,000. But I didn't see it as an expense. I saw it as an investment in the relationship, a way to contribute using my own skills, a quiet way of saying, I'm here, I care, and I want to help make this special day even more perfect. I wrote the check, carefully placed it in an elegant envelope with a handwritten congratulatory card. This time, I thought, surely they would see. The wedding day arrived. As we drove onto the resort grounds, that familiar heavy feeling washed over me. The carefully curated luxury, the air thick with the scent of money and privilege I never possessed. Valets in crisp black vests whisked our car away. The soft strains of classical music drifted from a string trio, nestled near perfectly manicured hedges. Guests mingled in expensive linens and heirloom pearls, laughing and sipping bubbly champagne. Sophia was like a fish in water. She was greeted with air kisses, tight hugs, effusive compliments. She was instantly swept into the vortex of lively conversations and tinkling laughter, leaving me adrift, alone, feeling like an extra in someone else's movie. I trailed behind, trying to smile, trying to look natural, but the feeling of not belonging intensified with every step. The shadow I'd sensed earlier seemed to be closing in, right there in the midst of that picture-perfect scene. The event coordinator, a woman with an impeccable updo and a practiced, professional smile, intercepted us near the entrance to the main outdoor reception area. She held a clipboard, her eyes scanning the list without really looking at me. Name? She asked, her tone flat. Ethan Cole. I replied, clearing my throat slightly. She paused for a second, tapped her pen on the paper, then the smile returned, though perhaps a bit tighter this time. Oh yes, here you are. You're in the spouse section. She gestured with her hand towards the far edge of the tented area. Right over there. I followed her pointed finger, and my heart seemed to stop for a beat. There, distinctly separate from the main dining area with its elegant, hand-lettered place cards, was a row of flimsy-looking metal folding chairs. Gray, slightly wobbly, placed near a side exit where flimsy drapes led to the service area. And worse, positioned near a cluster of large, poorly concealed trash bins, from which a faint, damp smell occasionally wafted on the breeze. It's just for extended guests, the coordinator added, her voice still neutral, already turning away to greet the next arrivals. Guests who were clearly destined for the more important sections. Extended guests. Not family. Not guests of honor. Not even family by marriage. Just extra. Extra guest. Ethan Spouse. My name wasn't even fully spelled out. Just Ethan Spouse. Like a footnote, an optional add-on someone forgot to delete from a spreadsheet. I stood there stunned. The bitter taste of humiliation rose in my throat. Blood rushed to my face, my ears ringing. I glanced towards the main seating area, where elegant fabric-covered chairs were neatly arranged. Near the head table, amidst the joyful chatter, I saw him. Marcus, Sophia's college ex. The charming, well-connected man, always the ideal son-in-law figure in the Sterling's eyes. He sat there, right at the heart of the event, dressed in an expensive beige suit, looking completely at ease, as if he were born to be there. One hand rested casually on the back of Sophia's chair. She was leaning towards him, smiling radiantly as he whispered something in her ear. And me? I stood at the edge of the celebration, my hand still clutching the envelope. Inside wasn't just a thoughtfully written card. Inside was a check for $5,000. Money I paid to help illuminate this very place. This place where I was being publicly humiliated. My name wasn't on the program. My contribution wasn't acknowledged. But I paid to make this place glow, paid for the perfect pictures those people at the main tables would cherish. I took a deep breath, then another. Tried to push down the anger that was starting to smolder inside. It wasn't quite anger yet. The dominant feeling was numbness. A specific kind of numbness that comes when humiliation becomes too familiar, like a worn-out old coat you keep wearing because it still fits, even though it's tattered and faded. I walked towards the folding chair. Cold metal. I sat down, hearing its protesting creak. My hands rested on the envelope in my lap. My eyes fixed on the family scene unfolding before me. A family that had never truly chosen me, never truly seen me. And somewhere between the lilting music and the murmured conversations of a celebration I wasn't really part of, something began to settle in my chest. Not resentment, not yet. Just a stark, painful awareness. I didn't belong here. And maybe, finally, I was done pretending I did. I sat in that chair longer than I should have. The cold metal seeped through the fabric of my trousers. Every slight shift I made was answered with a dismal creak. A small folding chair, next to the trash bins. That was the Sterling's version of hospitality for me. I looked around, watching the polished symphony of a Sterling wedding unfold like a meticulously rehearsed play. Wine glasses clinked under glittering chandeliers suspended from the tent ceiling. Guests in designer pastel gowns floated through the venue like carefully curated brushstrokes on a portrait. Everyone had a place, a role, a label defining their importance. And mine. Spouse section. Side exit. Disposable. The envelope still rested on my lap, feeling unnaturally thick. Inside was that $5,000 check. 3 full days of hard work for my entire crew. I hadn't just paid out of pocket. I'd pulled strings, cut my own margins, stayed late doing wiring test runs at the vendor's warehouse. I had made sure every wire, every bulb, every flicker of light in that tent was flawless. Not because I needed thanks, but because I foolishly thought being dependable, being useful, might earn me a place at their table. I didn't want applause. I just craved respect. My gaze drifted back towards the head table. Sophia was laughing again, head thrown back, one hand resting casually on Marcus's shoulder. Marcus, of course, he had the Sterling pedigree. Ivy League, wealth management, played lacrosse, or maybe it was polo, I couldn't remember. He wasn't just accepted by her family, he was expected. When I came along, I wasn't a fit. I was a glitch. Sophia never said it outright. She didn't have to. It was in the way she corrected me in front of her mother, the way she hesitated to bring me to her firm's galas, saying, "It's more of a networking thing than a spouse thing," the way she avoided using the word husband in social circles where status was currency. I sat there, on that cold chair, looking at the glass of water placed on the rickety little table beside me. They hadn't even offered me a glass of wine. Utterly invisible. A wave of desolation washed over me, a feeling of being completely adrift, directionless. Like standing in the middle of a vast desert with no compass, no way out. This was rock bottom. Nothing left to cling to, no one left to count on. Even the wife I loved was in another world, a world where there was no room for me. And then, in that moment of terrifying stillness, something inside me shifted. It wasn't loud, not violent. Just a clean, quiet snap, like a cable pulled too tight for too long finally giving way. The kind of break that makes no sound but changes everything. An image flashed through my mind. My father. He was a craftsman too, a skilled carpenter. He once told me when I was just a boy, "Ethan, you can lose everything, money, possessions, but never lose your self-respect. That's the one thing nobody can take from you unless you let them." Those words, forgotten for years, echoed clearly in my mind now. Or maybe it was a silent prayer, a plea to some higher power for the strength to do the right thing. Or maybe it was simply a moment of profound clarity rising from the depths of my own soul. My worth wasn't determined by whether the Sterlings accepted me. It resided within me, in the work I did, in the man I was. I made my decision. I was done pretending. I stood up. Not quickly, not dramatically. Just a slow, measured rise. The scraping sound of the metal chair legs against the stone patio was the only sound that broke the bubble of silence around me. I took a deep breath, held it, then let it out slowly. I adjusted the lapels of my jacket, feeling the presence of the envelope in my inner pocket. No, it didn't belong here. No one noticed me stand. No one cared as I began to walk, leaving my dark corner, heading towards the heart of the party. I moved through the rows of tables where people laughed and chatted. A hush began to spread like a ripple as I passed. A few people paused their conversations, their curious eyes following me. Sophia's cousin turned her head. A waiter quickly stepped aside, looking confused. Even the photographer lowered his camera, his lens tilting towards me as I approached the magnificent floral arch. The arch I had helped design, illuminated by the equipment I had paid for. The warm amber LED lights I had specifically chosen to enhance Olivia's champagne-colored gown were glowing brilliantly. Sophia saw me. Her smile froze. Marcus stepped back slightly. Olivia, in her wedding dress, looked bewildered, one hand still clutching her bouquet. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I just looked directly at Sophia for a second, then let my gaze sweep over the faces turned towards me. The people who had never truly seen me, but were always willing to take what I offered. And I said, my voice calm, clear, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Real family doesn't pay for a seat. That was all. Then I turned my back and walked away. Not in anger, not in some grand tantrum, just in perfect clarity. For the first time in years, I felt my feet firmly planted on the ground. Not vengeful, just awake. No one followed me. No one called my name. The world behind me continued, the orchestra picking up its tempo, the wedding carrying on as if I had been a mere gust of wind, a dream someone chose to forget. Outside the reception tent, the air felt cool and crisp, almost bracing. It filled my lungs like undeniable truth. I walked across the gravel path, my footsteps steady and sure. Reaching my car parked at the edge of the vineyard, I loosened my tie, got into the driver's seat, didn't start the engine, just left the door cracked open. The faint, muffled sound of music drifted from the party. My phone remained silent, utterly silent. Not a single text, not a missed call, not from Sophia, not from anyone. That silence said everything. It confirmed what the folding chair had tried to tell me. I didn't belong in that world, and I was right to leave. The following days passed in a heavy silence from the Sterling side. That silence wasn't confusion or remorse. It was deliberate dismissal, a way of asserting that my actions weren't worth their attention. It only strengthened my resolve. They had made their choice long ago. Now it was my turn. On the second morning after the wedding, my phone rang. It wasn't Sophia. It was Clara, Sophia's cousin, the only one I felt any real connection with. Clara was different from the rest of the Sterlings, seemingly more genuine and less concerned with appearances. Ethan. Her voice was a whisper, as if calling from a secret location. Are you okay? I almost laughed. No one had asked me that in months. I'm fine, Clara. You sound like you're hiding in a closet. Close, she replied. I'm in the hotel pantry. The post-wedding brunch. Things are chaotic here. Oh, your exit. It's everywhere, Ethan. Someone recorded you walking out, and the line you said. It's gone viral on Instagram, TikTok too. Real family doesn't pay for this. You're a meme now, of course. I could picture it. Guests sipping champagne, while sneakily filming me from behind floral centerpieces, uploading it before dessert was even served. Now I was an accidental internet sensation. Are they angry? I asked. Angry? Olivia's parents are furious. Your name is practically forbidden here. Sophia hasn't said much, just quiet. Clara paused. I really thought she would have at least texted you. Me too, I admitted. She just keeps repeating, he'll come around. He's just being dramatic. Clara sighed. Dramatic? The man who paid for half the lighting, who got seated next to the garbage. He's being dramatic? Thanks for the call, Clara. I'm sorry, Ethan, she added before hanging up. For everything. Clara's apology, small and unable to fix anything, was the first sincere thing I'd heard from the Sterling side in a long time. It didn't make me less angry, but it made me feel clearer. The silence from the others wasn't a pause. It was a verdict. No one rushed to defend me. No one scrambled to apologize. No one said, we didn't mean it, because they did mean it. Every seating arrangement, every conversation I was excluded from, every cold smile and backhanded compliment, they didn't value me. They valued what I provided, my skills, my money, my silence. And now that I had broken that silence, they had nothing left to say. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. From here, I could see the roof lines of buildings I'd helped wire, projects I'd been called in to fix when no one else could. That was my legacy. Quiet work, solid craftsmanship, things that lasted. But I had let that identity bleed into my personal life, allowed myself to become a background character in my own marriage. Sophia once said I had a gift for not taking up space. She meant it as a compliment. I was easy, low maintenance, chill, as she liked to say. The kind of man who didn't cause scenes, who kept the peace, who always fixed what was broken. But in her world, silence wasn't peace. Silence was permission. And for years, I had been giving them permission to treat me like I didn't matter. Not anymore. I looked back at my phone. The video Clara mentioned had popped up on my feed. Just 15 shaky seconds, filmed from a distance. Me standing at the arch, saying the line, turning, and walking away. But it was the comments below that caught my attention. This guy is a legend. Quiet respect. He paid and got disrespected? I'd have done worse. Finally, someone said it. Hundreds, maybe thousands of comments. They didn't know me, but somehow they saw me. For the first time, I saw myself too. Not as the outsider, but as the man who finally spoke up. The silence from Sophia stretched into the third day, the fourth. It wasn't just dismissal anymore. It was strategy. She was waiting for me to crack, to crawl back with an apology and excuses. She thought she still held the upper hand. She was wrong, because what no one on the Sterling side knew, not her parents, not Olivia, not even Sophia, was the true extent of my influence on the very wedding they had just thrown. They thought I was just the electrician, the guy who could haggle with vendors, the silent contributor. They didn't realize I had built an invisible scaffolding supporting the entire event. I didn't need to yell. I just needed to gently pull a single thread. So, I made a few calls. Polite, professional. No threats, no demands. Just questions. I called Marcus, the lighting guy, different Marcus. Hey Marcus, did you receive the final payment from the Sterling coordinator for Olivia's wedding yet? He said he hadn't. Well, hold off on that for now, I said. I personally guaranteed that contract, and I need to confirm a few details first. In the meantime, don't dismantle the arch or perform any other post-event services until you hear back from me. Marcus, who had worked with me for years and knew I always kept my word, agreed immediately. Next, I called Jasmine from the AV team, the one who stayed late to balance the sound for the ceremony. She was preparing a highlight teaser video for Olivia's Instagram. Jasmine, could you hold off on editing that video for a bit? There are a couple of payment issues that need clearing up. Jasmine owed me a couple of favors after I helped her land a contract with a major hotel downtown. She agreed. Then there was Thomas from Champagne and Company. They had agreed to sponsor a limited supply of vintage champagne for the post-wedding brunch in exchange for a social media campaign through my affiliated channels. I gently informed him that the agreement was temporarily suspended due to a change in plans. No free champagne. Finally, I contacted Natalie, the freelance photographer scheduled to deliver Olivia's wedding album by the end of the week. Natalie, I think you should pause the album delivery. There are some unresolved disputes with other vendors related to the event. Technically, it wasn't a lie. I was a vendor, and I was very much unresolved. None of them pushed back. They knew me. They trusted me. They had worked with me for years. In this business, professionalism isn't just about contracts. It's about reputation. And mine had always been solid. They didn't know the whole story, but the tone in my voice was enough to signal something was wrong. By Friday, the dominoes began to fall. I got a text from Jasmine. The Sterling coordinator is calling nonstop. They need the highlight reel for a family screening tonight. Want me to tell them you pulled the plug? No, I texted back. Tell them there's a technical delay. An hour later, Marcus forwarded me a screenshot of an angry email from Lorraine Sterling, demanding a refund for the lighting costs due to poor management and vendor interference. I just smiled. I wasn't being cruel. I was being deliberate. For years, I let them use my talents, my connections, my time, and in return, they gave me the folding chair. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't burn down their tent. I simply stopped carrying their weight. It was astonishing how quickly things fell apart when I let go. Olivia's wedding had been an Instagram fantasy, carefully curated aesthetics, hashtags like hashtag Sterling Moments, hashtag Olivia Forever. But the facade had a fragile foundation. All it took was one man quietly withdrawing his silent support for the cracks to show. Sophia showed up at my temporary apartment door on Saturday evening, nearly a week after I'd walked out of Olivia's wedding. I had rented this place a few months prior when we decided to look for a larger home, though the search had stalled due to her workload. Her arrival was unannounced, but not surprising. The silence couldn't last forever. She knocked once, firmly, just enough force for me to know it was her before I even opened the door. She stood there, in perfect business attire, black trousers, a beige trench coat, hair pulled back neatly, shoulders back, spine straight, as if bracing for a courtroom appearance rather than a conversation with her husband. She didn't say hello. "You didn't have to make such a scene," she said, her voice cold, brushing past me into the apartment as if she still lived there. "You embarrassed us." Us. I let the word hang in the air. There it was again. That automatic alignment with her family, as if I were the outsider who had crossed a line, not the husband who had finally reached his breaking point. She stood in the middle of my living room, arms crossed, surveying the space as if it had changed without her permission. Maybe it had. Maybe I had. "Are you finished?" I asked, my voice calm, surprising even myself. She rolled her eyes. "Don't be like that, Ethan." "Like what?" I countered. "Petty? Passive-aggressive? Posting invoices online." "You mean the invoice I paid?" I emphasized. "The one no one thanked me for? The one that lit up your sister's wedding while I sat next to a trash bin?" Her jaw tightened. "I didn't seek you next to Marcus, but you didn't move me away from there either." I shot back. "Coordinating the seating wasn't your job, but being my wife was." My voice grew sharper. "Seeing me, speaking up when your family treated me like the help." Her mouth opened, then closed. For a split second, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd break through the armor, that she'd acknowledge it. But no, she folded her arms tighter. "You're reading too much into it." I turned, walked to the kitchen counter, opened a drawer, and pulled out a piece of paper. It was the printout of the seating chart I'd instinctively photographed that day. I slid it across the granite countertop towards her. "Then read this." She stepped forward reluctantly, her eyes scanning the sheet. They landed on the label next to my name. "Extra guest. Ethan Spouse." She blinked once, twice, then looked away, as if the words stung more than she wanted to admit. "I didn't know," she mumbled, her voice suddenly smaller. "I didn't realize it would hurt you that much." That much. The phrase dropped between us like a stone. "This wasn't just about a seat, Sophia," I said. "This was about years of being treated like a footnote in your life. Like someone who should just be grateful to be invited." She started, then stopped. For the first time since she walked in, she had no ready defense. No file folder of excuses. No neat conclusion. She looked around the apartment, as if searching for something familiar, something that could tether her back to who we used to be. Her eyes landed on the envelope still sitting on my coffee table, the one I'd brought back from the wedding. "You didn't give it to Olivia?" she asked. "No. You were going to?" "Yeah," I said quietly, before I realized I was just a line item on her sister's budget sheet. She looked back at me, and her face softened slightly. Not quite regret, not quite sadness, just a flicker of realization, the kind that comes too late to save anything. "I don't know how we got here," she murmured. "We didn't get here, Sophia," I said. "You brought me here. One shrug at a time, one silence at a time. One dinner where you let your mother call me the contractor without correcting her. I didn't think it mattered." I let out a bitter laugh. "It mattered to me." She sat down on the edge of the couch. For a moment, we were quiet. The room wasn't large, but it felt vast. The space between us seemed to have become something physical, an uncrossable chasm. Finally, she looked up. "So what happens now?" I shook my head. "You tell me." "I stopped guessing where I stood in your life the moment I saw my name next to a trash bin." She swallowed hard. "You're angry." "I was angry," I corrected. "No. Now I'm just done pretending I'm okay with being invisible." She nodded slowly. Dad wrote you a letter." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh." She reached into her purse and handed it to me. A thick envelope, gold trim, of course. I opened it after she left. The contents were brief, no apology. Just a warning, penned in Harold Sterling's sharp, decisive handwriting. "You have made things more difficult for Sophia. Be careful what bridges you burn." I stared at the sentence for a long time. Then I smiled. A sad, clear smile. Because I knew I hadn't burned any bridges. I had simply stopped rebuilding the ones no one ever intended to cross from the other side. Some things don't collapse dramatically. They simply dissolve, quietly, piece by piece, until only empty space remains. That's how my marriage ended. No fiery arguments, no public accusations splashed across headlines or social media. Just a separation agreement, signed quietly, a legal document filed amidst the silence we had allowed to grow between us for years. Sophia moved back into the guest house at her parents' estate. That action told me more than any words could have. They welcomed her back without hesitation, not because they loved her more, but because I was no longer useful. The man who fixed everything had finally stopped showing up with his tools and a willing smile. And once I wasn't building their empire in the background, they didn't care if I remained part of the story. No one else from the Sterling side reached out. Not Lorraine. Not Harold. Not even Olivia, who I heard eventually had to pay full price for the lighting setup I was supposed to have partially covered. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered the folding chair, and the feeling vanished. It's funny how the absence of conflict can still feel like clarity. Meanwhile, my phone stayed busy, but for the first time in a long time, it wasn't ringing with demands or quiet desperation. It was ringing with opportunity. My actions at the wedding, combined with the subsequent invoice post, hadn't just earned sympathy online. They had earned respect within my industry. Vendors started messaging me, asking for advice on handling difficult clients. Event planners asked if I could speak to their teams about the importance of treating all partners fairly, big or small. Even a local business podcast invited me on to talk about quiet professionalism and how behind-the-scenes people like me often have their contributions erased in the events we help build. But the most significant opportunity came from Breyer and Bloom, a premium wedding consulting group managing elite venues along the East Coast. We're restructuring our vendor relations program, their email read, and we want you to lead it, not as a subcontractor. As a consultant, I met them in a minimalist downtown office overlooking the skyline. Their director, a woman named Janice, didn't mince words. "You've earned the trust of people we've never been able to reach," she said. "Not just because of what you do, but how you carry yourself. Vendors respect you. Clients listen to you. And apparently, so does the internet." I accepted the position on the spot. It wasn't about revenge. It was about realignment. For once, I wasn't being asked to play a background role. I was being invited to design the foundation. Time moved on, weeks turning into months. Life began to feel lighter. I found a new place, a small older house on the edge of town that needed a lot of work. It wasn't fancy, not in a prestigious neighborhood, but it had good bones and a backyard just big enough for weekend barbecues. I decided to renovate it myself, room by room, rewiring the lights, repainting the walls, replacing outdated fixtures with those same capable hands. But this time, a new sense of pride flowed into every task. The process of fixing up the house mirrored my internal healing. Tearing out the old, worn-out parts felt like shedding old hurts. Reinforcing the foundation felt like strengthening my own core values. Creating a new, clean space, exactly the way I wanted it, felt like reclaiming my life. I started reconnecting with old friends, people I'd drifted away from while trying to fit into Sophia's world. I built new relationships based on mutual respect and honesty. With Clara, who still called regularly just to check in, with business partners who had now become genuine friends. I realized that rebuilding a life is a lot like building a house. You need a solid foundation of self-respect. You need sturdy walls of healthy boundaries. You need windows to let in the light of hope and positive connections. And most importantly, you need to do the work yourself, brick by brick. No one else can build your happiness for you. 11 months. Almost a year since the day I walked away from Olivia's wedding, leaving behind the folding chair and the world it represented. The envelope with the $5,000 check still lay dormant in a drawer in my new home office, nestled next to a stack of neatly folded work shirts and a half-empty box of light bulbs. Occasionally, when opening the drawer for something practical, my eyes would glance over it. It no longer evoked pain or humiliation. It just sat there, a silent artifact from a past chapter, a reminder of the man I used to be, of the price I almost paid for the illusion of inclusion. Now, I rarely thought about it. That afternoon, my backyard smelled of charcoal and freshly cut grass. The happy sizzle of chicken on the grill mingled with laughter drifting from the patio where friends gathered around simple wooden tables. Not folding chairs assigned out of necessity, but an assortment of chairs pulled together comfortably, where people could just be themselves. No tuxedos, no string quartets, no stage perfection. Just a warm spring afternoon, an Otis Redding playlist humming softly from a Bluetooth speaker, and people I didn't have to perform for. I was hosting a barbecue. Not a forced holiday gathering, not a social obligation. This was my own kind of celebration. An anniversary of clarity. A year of choosing myself. And more than anything, a year of finally learning what belonging truly felt like when it wasn't a performance or a purchase. Clara brought a fragrant homemade peach cobbler. Her husband expertly manned the cornhole boards. Their son ran barefoot across the lawn, chasing bubbles with a plastic sword. It felt simple, easy, and for a man who had spent too long straining under the weight of forced politeness and quiet erasure, this was paradise. I flipped a burger and looked around, taking it all in. My friends were here. People from work, from old gigs, vendors I used to subcontract with, now mingling with genuine smiles. Not a single one asked about Sophia. Not a single one mentioned the wedding, the social media post, or the warning letter from her father. Not because they'd forgotten, but because they knew I had moved on. They respected the silence I now chose, not the silence I used to suffer through. Suddenly, there was a gentle tapping of a spoon against a glass. It was James, another small lighting company owner who had become one of my closest friends over the past few months. He stood up, holding his beer aloft. All right, everybody," he called out, his voice cheerful. "Before we all slip into a food coma, I need to say something." The chatter quieted just enough for his voice to carry. He pointed towards me with a grin. "To the man who reminded us all that real family isn't about who shares your last name. It's about who shows up, who stands up, and who refuses to sit in a chair he never should have been put in, to begin with." There were a few chuckles, a few nods of agreement. But what happened next was unexpected. Everyone present raised their cups. "To Ethan," James proclaimed, "the quiet man who made the loudest statement of the year." And just like that, glasses clinked, voices joined in unison. "To Ethan." I stood there, momentarily speechless. I felt that familiar warmth rise in my chest, the kind that used to come with shame, embarrassment, the feeling of being wrongly put on display. But this time, it was completely different. This wasn't a spotlight of scrutiny. It was recognition. Genuine, kind, earned recognition. I raised my own cup, a small, sincere smile forming. Thank you, everyone. I hadn't walked out of that wedding looking for applause. I had simply, finally, stood up for myself. Someone clapped. Someone else yelled, "Damn right." And then the music kicked back in, the joyful buzz returning. Later, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the yard, I slipped back inside for a quiet moment. That drawer called to me again, not urgently, just curiously. I opened it and looked at the envelope once more. Still sealed, still untouched. I picked it up, sat on the edge of my bed, running my fingers over the embossed lettering. $5,000. More than just a number. It was the last piece of myself I had been willing to give away to a family who saw me as a transaction. I could cash it, donate it, burn it. But I realized I didn't need to do any of that. I gently slid the envelope back into the drawer. Not as a wound to be hidden, but as a small monument. Not a monument to betrayal, but to growth. It was no longer a reminder of pain. It was proof. Proof that I once believed in people who never truly saw me. And proof that when I finally saw myself, truly saw myself, I chose to walk away. Outside, someone called my name. I stood up, glanced around my home one last time. The walls I painted, the lights I wired, the space I created. Then I smiled and headed back out into the backyard light. Not for applause, not for approval, just to sit at the table I built myself. A solid seat, no folding chairs required. And here, there was only room for those who saw me, exactly as I am. That journey taught me so much. About self-worth, about dignity, about the true meaning of family and belonging. Sometimes, a closed door isn't an ending, but the beginning of a new path, one you pave yourself, brick by brick, stronger and truer. The scar from that folding chair is still there, but it doesn't ache anymore. It reminds me that silence can be a burden, but a voice speaking from truth and self-respect holds incredible power. If you're listening to this story, and if you've ever felt invisible, ever been overlooked, ever been made to sit in the folding chair section of your own life in one way or another, I want you to know you're not alone. Leave a comment below if my story resonated with you, or if you have a story of your own you'd like to share. Sharing is sometimes the first step on the road to healing. If you believe that every person deserves respect, that fairness ultimately prevails, even if it sometimes needs a nudge from quiet courage, please share this story with others. And finally, if you found meaning in this story, if it touched your heart, and you'd like to support our mission of continuing to spread these stories of truth, resilience, and hope, you can show that support through the Super Thanks button right below this video. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps us continue this important journey, because I believe that giving is part of healing. And every act of kindness, every effort to live true to your values, is seen by God. Thank you for listening. Keep faith in yourself and in what's right. I'll see you again.